Voters went to the polls last night and did something never done before. They voted to pass close to 99% of the school budgets around New York State. And every budget on the ballot in the capital region passed. The State School Boards Association, among other groups, believes that New York's 2% property tax cap passed in 2011 is the main reason behind the success at the polls. Here with his take, our political analyst and New York Post political columnist, Fred Dicker. Fred, the average passage rate since I think about 1969 is about 85%. This is leaps and bounds above that. What are you hearing?
Well, it is extraordinary. There's no question about it. And a lot of it has to do with the tax cap that was put in 2011. Governor Andrew Cuomo was behind it. Also, though, this year there was a huge increase in state spending on education, a $1.3 billion increase. A lot of the school districts knew they were going to get more money, and they must have factored that in. But I'll tell you, that's good news, but it's offset by the bad news that New York still has amongst the highest property tax rates, school tax rates in the nation, and many people are being crushed by them.
We're showing just some of the numbers right now. Albany had 224 million, Schenectady 168, Troy 108, Saratoga Springs 117. Districts can go over the cap, Fred, but it didn't look like the districts who did were too successful this time.
About a little more than half, I think, were successful, but a lot of them did lose, and they did learn their lesson, obviously. That's why they didn't propose going over the cap. But that said, early on, the school districts were promised, Cody, that there was going to be mandate relief, that the state's pressure on them to spend on this or that program would be lifted. That never happened. Many of the school districts have laid off teachers, laid off aides. They've learned to live within the cap, and while that's good for taxpayers, I think, many people would say that our education system is deteriorating as a result.
And teachers' unions, NYSA put out a statement today calling that cap undemocratic, arguing it's denying communities local control of their schools. I know that there's a push in the Capitol to make this cap permanent. What are you hearing now? And is there any effort on the table at all to repeal the cap?
Well, the teachers' unions would love to have the cap repealed. There's no question about that. They call it undemocratic because they can't control it. It requires a 60% supermajority to override the cap, and the school districts can't do it. That said, the cap expires next month, so there's a need to either renew it, make it permanent, renew it for a few more years as it was done the first time. The likelihood is that will happen, that the Democrats in the Assembly don't want to do it, but they want to see a renewal of the rent regulations for New York City, and the Senate Republicans who control the Senate are saying at the very least they want an extension of the property tax cap in exchange for renewing the rent regulations in New York City, which is a heck of a club to wield against the Assembly Democrats.
Yeah, I'll say, all right, well, we'll check in with you about it in a month then. Fred, thanks so much.
Sure.
Reminder, you can hear Fred's radio program live from the state capitol every weekday morning from 10 to 11 on Talk 1300 AM.